Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimada-tatam Bhuvigananti Ye Bhurida Janaha. So, Sri Krishna is with devotees in Dakshineshwar, and after everybody has left, M has decided, M or Master Masha, who is the chronicler of the gospel, has decided to spend his night at Dakshineshwar. It is very rarely he would be able to do so, but he somehow wanted to be away from his house. So whenever he got an opportunity, as Sri Krishna would advise the householder disciples, that now and then you have to just go away from the family, maybe for 1 day, 3 days, if not 3 days, at least 1 day, and have nirjan vas. Nirjan means either live in solitude or live in the company of holy people. So that is the only way Sri Krishna used to say that householders can detach themselves, at least for a small period in their very busy life schedule. So now and then, if you go, you develop a taste for solitude. And M was very keen. So at the first available opportunity, he used to often visit and request. And the temple authorities also used to make arrangements if somebody wished to stay overnight. Some of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, young disciples, they also used to stay, like Baburam Maharaj. Sri Ramakrishna himself would ask them to stay because he could give some special guidance to them. Normally, when the crowd comes, there are many people, and Sri Ramakrishna would be talking in a very general way, but certain specific uh, techniques, some specific hints on how to do sadhana and all. And he used to tell his would-be sannyasin or monastic disciples to come on weekdays rather than on Sunday or weekends. If they could, if they could manage to come, and especially Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you'll find most of the conversations of the gospel are held on Sunday when M had holidays. So he was struggling a lot, but by chance, if there was some weekday when he was off, he would use the days on which he was free to stay overnight. So Sri Krishna is asking him, will you sleep in the room in the Panchavati? There was a specific reason. There were some guest rooms in the main campus. There were some rooms in Panchavati also. Panchavati, as you all know, it was a 5 trees. Panchavati means Vati, a place where 5 trees, specific trees were grown. One is a banyan tree, there's amla, there are bakul tree, and there's specific 5 trees which they say if you do sadhana under that Panchavati grove, where these trees are there, then it was a very silent place as well. Sri Ramakrishna did a lot of sadhana under the banyan tree in the Panchavati. So that was, banyan is the main tree, and there are 4 other trees surrounding that, the 4 corners. So there was a room there near Panchavati where Sri Ramakrishna did a lot of sadhana. So he's asking, will you sleep in the room? Of course, now Sri Ramakrishna he is staying in his room, in his living room, which also acted as a bedroom. And as you know, he had 2 cots, one for sitting and the other bigger cot with mosquito net for sleeping. So but some special guests, or maybe those who are very close to Sri Ramakrishna, would get a chance to stay in the Panchavati. So Mani said, Mani means here he is hiding his identity, is actually M. So M says that, won't they give me the upper floor room of the Nahabat? Now, Nahabat was also a very good room, and Master Mashe preferred that room because of the nice view, and it was very close. Of course, the Panchavati room was a little far, one had to walk a lot, but he preferred the Nabat room. But Sri Ramakrishna now is telling something very significant to him. Sri Ramakrishna will talk to the manager about money. He has not even spoken. The manager who decides which room he should be allotted, he will indicate a room for him. Now it all depends on the manager. If he wishes, he can give him Panchavati or he can give him that Nabat room. Mani is like the room on the upper floor of the Nabat. He is poetic by temperament. By staying there, he says, according to his uh, version here, he will be able to enjoy the view of the sky, the Ganges, the moonlight, and the flowering trees, and so forth. So this was his idea. But Sri Ramakrishna had other ideas in mind. People naturally would like to see the glory of nature, but Sri Ramakrishna was interested in some other thing. He says, Sri Ramakrishna says, why wouldn't they assign the room to you? But I suggested the room in Panchavati because so much repetition of Hari's name and meditation have been practiced there. He said, definitely if I didn't suggest this Nahabat room where he could have a nice view, no doubt, of the Ganges and the trees, and being poetic by temperament, M naturally felt that this would be a better place. But Sri Ramakrishna has other ideas. He said, why they will definitely assign you this room, the Nahabat room, but I suggested Panchavati because of the wonderful association. Sri Ramakrishna himself did lot of repetition, japa and meditation there. So he says that will benefit you. The vibrations of sadhana or upasana which Sri Ramakrishna himself did for so many years in that Panchavati room. He said, because of that, I wanted to suggest to you to stay there so that you will get some benefit from the vibrations of that room. Now the next chapter, the conversation is going on, but a new heading, a subheading has been given. To love the Lord is the end of life. So now the whole theme is changing, and before this you saw there were so many incidents and parables Sri Ramakrishna was mentioning, but it is evening, incense has been burnt in Sri Ramakrishna's room, Thakur is seated on a smaller cot and is meditating. Mani is seated on the floor. Mani means M. Rakhal, Latu and Ramlal are also in the room. Perhaps either they are staying here, this young Latu normally stayed. And Ramlal being, I think he had his own room. Ramlal was a nephew of Sri Ramakrishna. So naturally, he would be staying there. He had perhaps his room. But Rakhal would have come, and very often he also used to stay overnight. So Thakur says to Mani, the main thing is to develop bhakti for God, to love him. M, he is telling M. He asked Ramlal to sing. Ramlal had a very sweet voice. And Thakur sings the initial words of every song. And he starts the singing, but then allows Ramlal to continue. So Ramlal is singing. Most of the songs they knew by heart. They didn't need any book to refer to while singing. All these wonderful songs were they had learned it by heart. So as requested by Thakur would recite the first line or half a line and then ask Ramlal to continue. So the sannyasa of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, there is a beautiful song on the sannyasa of Sri Gauranga. We all know who Gauranga Mahaprabhu is. He is also known as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who started the famous Vaishnava Bhakti, the Bhakti as practiced by the Vaishnavas, that movement. Of course, there were Ramanuja and other saints who were also you may say the founders of the Vaishnava movement, but a different kind of, it is also known as Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because Sri Gauranga hailed from a place which is known as Gauda Pradesh, which is, you can say, the modern day Bengal and Bihar put together. So it is known as Gauda Pradesh. So Gaudiya means the Vaishnavism which belonged to the Gaudiya people, or because of Sri Gauranga's birthplace happened to be there. So his eyes were, then the song says, the song is so beautiful. all through these songs, the Vaishnava songs, which are normally sung either singly or in chorus. The chorus is known as Kirtan. So Sri Ramakrishna Swami Vivekananda believed that real music is in Kirtan. There can be good classical music, but unless it has a bhava, some sentiment, some divine emotion to convey, no matter how beautifully the song is sung, if it doesn't have the bhava or a higher emotion associated with that song, Swami Vivekananda said, I would not call it music at all. The singer may be good, he might have been a big ustad or a pandit. It takes years and years of training classical to sing classical music, whether it is the Drupad or Khayal. But these kirtans, Swami Vivekananda was a great musicologist. In fact, he wrote a book on which was known as Sangit Kalpataru. He didn't write, he compiled it and he wrote a beautiful introduction which can be published as an independent book. It is the science of music. So introducing the idea of kirtan in that book, he says, maybe his friend also helped him. It was actually published in his friend's name, but the introduction was his, but in fact he did most of the compilation. So, and of course his friend for whom he wrote that book to financially help him, when he was just 21 or 22 years old. He had just met Sri Ramakrishna, but this was one of his great literary works, the beautiful introduction he gave. In fact, when I was in Gujarat, we have translated that book, Sangit Kalpataru, not the entire book, because the songs of Chaitanya and all the different saints of those days, they were all in Bengali and Sanskrit. Some were Sanskrit, but most of it was in Bengali. So the songs was very difficult to translate into Gujarati in a poetic way. To maintain the chanda, to maintain the meter, it is so difficult to translate. You can give the bhavartha, which will be in prose, but you can't create another song in the local language, that is Gujarati. But the prose portion we published as a separate book, which was known as Sangit Kalpataru. So some of the great musicians who are our devotees, they said such a comprehensive, though it was not a very big introduction, but it became a small book. And he says it is so much information has been packed into that. Unless one is a great authority on music, Swamiji has also given the different talas of pakawaj and tabla, how to practice. Everything is there. What do you mean by music? What are the ragas? Everything. And what is true music? So in that he writes that the true music is that where the lyrics are as important as the musical part or the classical music part of the song. So the lyrics and the bhava or the emotion, the divine emotion associated with those that song creates a real music according to him. So Sri Ramakrishna used to sing in his own sweet voice. Though Sri Ramakrishna was not a trained musician, Swami Vivekananda was a trained musician because his father, who knew he had a taste for performing arts, especially the fine arts or the performing arts, which like music. So he saw to it that Narendranath in his youth learnt some of the instruments which were very popular. Esraj, even tabla he could play, pakawaj he could obviously play. So he received this training from some of the greatest ustads of those days. Calcutta was the center where Hindustani music was flourishing. But he also learnt the purest form of Indian music, that is Drupad. Even before the Khayal and the other systems came, they were modified. The Drupad was modified by the Mughals, who wanted a slightly less difficult type of music, which is now known as Khayal, and everything, it is also known as Hindustani music. So Sri Ramakrishna used to, though he did not have any knowledge of Hindustani music like Swami Vivekananda did. In fact, sometimes he made fun when he asked Naren to sing. Naren would tune the tanpura for a long time. And see, those are very scientific. They would require this. They know that unless the tanpura is properly tuned, you can't sing. So when this was being done, Sri Ramakrishna used to get restless. He said, "Oh, you see, Naren, now he will tune the tanpura, and by the time he tunes, it will be night, and he will sing perhaps tomorrow." He used to joke like that because Sri Ramakrishna did not require any tanpura or any rhythm, though there were people who would give some kind of rhythm by tabla and pakhavaj, but Sri Ramakrishna's sense of laya or timing was so perfect that he would never break the tala or the laya, as they say. He was so particular. Tala means the beats. There are different songs which have to be sung in a particular, depending on the meter. They have to sing in a particular way. So Sri Ramakrishna was so particular about this that once he heard it from a professional musician, he could exactly imitate it without any knowledge or background of classical music. His ears were so sharp and his concentration was so much that whatever he hears once, will not only remember the lyrics but also sing in exactly the same way with all the musical subtleties which he could understand. But he was not a trained musician, so but he could reproduce wonderfully. And once he heard anything, then I think it was a God-given gift. And even Holy Mother says, Swamiji was a trained classical singer, but compared to Swamiji, Thakur's voice, not only voice, but the way he sang, uh, it was far, far superior. Such a golden voice he had. Anyway, so now Thakur now is quite old. This was towards the end of his life. So I think he was not in a position to sing. And moreover, he had this problem, the cancer of the throat. So perhaps he was not, but he used to make Ramlal sing these songs. One of the songs was the Sannyas of Gauranga. Many people think that definitely Gauranga Mahaprabhu preached a lot amongst the householders. But the ideal of Gauranga is more Gauranga Mahaprabhu, just as Sri Ramakrishna married and had a household. So also Gauranga Mahaprabhu had married. His wife's name was Vishnupriya. But like Sri Ramakrishna, who took sannyas from Totapuri, even Gauranga Mahaprabhu took sannyas. And he was so strict that Keshav Bharati, his guru, whose reference will come now, that's why I'm giving you this introduction. Just to test, see, after all, in those days, householders could take sannyas. Most of the orders, they were great devotees or great scholars, and they would renounce their house and take sannyas from some sannyasi guru. So this Keshav Bharati, from whom Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, decided to test him. That is how the story goes. So before we sing this song, it will give you a background of background or the importance of Gauranga sannyasa. He was a married person, had a wife, and but once he took sannyasa, he was a very, very staunch sannyasin. So that whole event, how it happened and how he took sannyasa, and also the test that Keshav Bharati did. One of the tests which is so difficult, he said, I will give you sannyasa only if you pass my test. Keshav Bharati was also very strict. Even Gauranga Mahaprabhu, when he chose disciples, he was very, very strict with the disciples. If he really felt that somebody could maintain or preserve the vows of sannyasa, he would give them. Otherwise, he was a very strict disciplinarian. But the same Gauranga, from when Keshav Bharati, he went and he was full of bhakti. Gaurang Mahaprabhu, though he was a student of logic, Nyaya. Normally, people who are logicians, they are supposed to be very dry people. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu externally was very dry, very rational, and he could defeat any scholar. He wrote such a beautiful work on Nyaya, which people regret now because that was lost. And the story behind that is also wonderful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a friend. When he was very young, he was learning Nyaya. Navadvip, the place where he studied Nyaya, is supposed to be the heart, the main center of Indian logic, which was so tough to master. All the other systems, after learning, people would come to Navadvip to learn Nyaya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was one of those scholars. And he wrote a treatise as part of the studentship, or the just like PhD, you have to write a thesis. These students were expected to write a work which was original and which had some substance or stuff. Then only the disciple was accepted. So the Guru insisted on doing that. So before even meeting Keshav Bharati, he was a student. But his heart was so tender and so emotional and so much suited to the bhakti style of sadhana. We come to know this from an incident which happened in his youth. So he had already written a book as instructed by his guru. He said, you have to write something and you have to present it to me, and then I will decide whether it is really worth it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had written this work on Nyaya, and his friend, who were traveling by boat to meet the Guru, he also had written a book, and he thought his book is really good. And naturally, when you write some book, you expect that book to be read by others, by a large number of people. So they were just discussing and they were sharing the manuscripts of each other, when that friend was very dear friend of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gauranga as he was known. So he just saw, and after turning a few pages of this wonderful work, he said there were tears in his eyes. He didn't say anything, but he was just weeping. Then Chaitanya asked him, what is wrong? Why are you weeping? So Chaitanya, that friend told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, see, I read your book. After reading a few pages, I came to know, I have realized that once your book becomes popular, once it comes out and the Guru accepts it, and then it is given to the public, then nobody will read my book, because your work is far, far superior to mine. That is why I was crying, because I worked so hard to write this. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, without even hesitating for a moment, he said, is that all? But why do you cry? Don't cry. Don't worry. I will solve your problem. Then the friend was astonished. Now how is he going to solve my problem? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, without even hesitating for a moment, took his entire manuscript, which he had painfully written, and it was of far superior to what his friend wrote. But because he felt so bad that what this friend says, perhaps his book nobody will read, said, if don't cry because of this, I'll solve your problem. His heart was so magnanimous, he was so liberal, that he took the manuscript, his own manuscript, which he had written with so much of effort, he just threw it into the Ganga. And then he told his friend, now you don't worry, now your work will be read by all. Is that your problem? I just did it. I'm not very keen. He was full of bhakti. His emotions were overflowing at that time. To help a friend, a person who can help his friend and throw away his the manuscript which was written with so much of hard work, you can imagine what kind of heart he must have had. So anyway, he was tested even after this, when Keshav Bharati was requested by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that I was to embrace the life of a sannyasi. So please give me sannyas diksha. So this Keshav Bharati said, I have one test, I will test you. And if you pass that test, I will give you sannyas. What was the test? One of the most difficult tests. They say a person who can control his tongue. It is difficult because there are many sense organs which you need to control, but the tongue is supposed to be the most difficult. That is what his guru believed. So he said, I want to just test. How did he test? He said, you open your mouth. Every one of us know that when you put some substance, it is they say the saliva comes on the tongue. Even if it's a dry tongue, moment you put a sweet meat or something, immediately the saliva comes and it's secreted. That's a automatic reaction to something which is very nice to your taste buds, and then you start relishing it. So he said, my way of testing is I will take sugar. Sugar is a very sweet thing. Everybody likes sweets. So I said, I'll put the sugar on your tongue. You open your tongue, I'll put the sugar there. And if it still remains dry, that means you are tasting sugar, but you are not attached to it. You are so much detached that it doesn't really matter whether a thing is sweet or bitter. None of these, your control over the taste I wanted to test. And when he passes that test, he was so strict that he said, if even for a moment it becomes, the saliva comes and his tongue doesn't remain dry, then I will not give you sannyas. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they say, passes that test. So this Keshav Bharati was a very, very strict disciplinarian. He, in his hut, Swami, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu is going. And he used to visit his hut very often after sannyasa also. But that bhakti which was there, people think if one has bhakti, then jnana, sannyasa is only for jnanis who have intellect. What has bhakti got to do? Bhakti is good for householders. Oh, we have nothing to do. We cannot renounce everything. We'll just pray and uh, do some kind of devotional singing. That is what normally people believe. But Gauranga showed that to have real bhakti, para bhakti, as Swamiji says, one is Vaidhi bhakti, which is a far inferior type of bhakti, that you channelize your emotion towards God and expect Him to shower His grace. But the para bhakti is something far superior to even jnana, or as good as jnana. So that para bhakti he had. Then that song which Ramlal sang was, what an exquisite bright form of Gauranga. When you consider, when you meditate upon a holy person, normally you have a halo of light around that divine personality. You have to always think the darkness of ignorance is being removed by the glory or the exquisite bright form of the Ishta. So this bright form of Ishta, his eyes streaming with tears of love for the Lord, love for Krishna, have I seen in Keshav Bharati's hut. Keshav Bharati is Chaitanya's guru. So somebody has composed this song, and he says, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to his guru's hut, his eyes were streaming with tears of love. Gauranga is dancing and mad like an elephant. Now, elephant, when it gets into some kind of ecstasy, it just cannot control. Normally, elephant is a very steady animal. But even elephants, when they are under the influence of emotions, they start madly jumping. And they say mad elephants because lack of emotional control makes these elephants mad. So Gauranga was dancing like a mad elephant, and he sings and then rolls on the dust, tears streaming from his eyes. So he has been overwhelmed with the feelings, the bhakti, which is pure bhakti, not Vaidhi bhakti, but the para bhakti. He calls on Hari, weeping, piercing the mortal world and heaven with his thundering voice. Contrary to popular belief, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all these Vaishnavas, we think they were very soft people. Even Sri Ramakrishna, if you see some of the films that have been made, even the old black and white, it was so difficult to play the character of Sri Ramakrishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because the moment the actor thinks, when you weep, you have to appear as if you are supplicating, you are praying to the Lord, and you are expressing your helplessness. So that when they try to portray that, most of these movies, they show Sri Ramakrishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all these great people, because after all, it's a human actor. When he tries to imitate a divine personality, he also cries, but that cry is out of weakness. That's why you find these movies, they give a wrong idea. Some of our senior monks, when they were told that Sri Ramakrishna's black and white movie was first made by a very famous actor, but he said, no, we don't want to see this movie, because we have one idea of Sri Ramakrishna, how he was. And now we will see an actor acting the role of Sri Ramakrishna. That will disturb all our ideas, previously held ideas. So one has to be very particular. And one of the aspects which some of our senior monks said, which was not there, there was quite a few, I do not want to name, and name the actors also. It was really, they put a lot of effort and research to play the role of Thakur. But everybody found that there was one problem, which here you can see this description. Whoever has written this either has seen Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or at least knew what was his nature. So here he says, he calls on Hari, weeping, piercing the mortal world and heaven with his thundering voice. So this is what was missing in that movie on Sri Ramakrishna. He was shown as a weak person, a semi-mad person, mad after mother, and then people, the actor definitely would not have read so deeply. But Master Mashe says, when we saw Sri Ramakrishna, for example, just as here the poet has written that he was weeping and singing with his thundering voice, that voice full of strength. It is not a voice which was namby-pamby and crying like a child. There was nothing of that sort. So the movie on Sri Ramakrishna, when I saw it for the first time, we saw that the actor was trying to not only overact, but he acted in such a way, making Sri Ramakrishna feel a weakling, a weak person. He could not bring out that kind of strength. It's very difficult to play the role of Sri Ramakrishna. But here in this song, he says Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing, weeping, but at the same time his voice had the authority which comes out of renunciation, and with that thundering voice. Then he repeatedly prays in that song for liberation of the slave with a straw under his teeth and two palms joined together. So he's supplicating. He says, please liberate me. I do not want to be a slave to money, a slave to family, slave to all the things of the world which are dragging me down. So he's praying to the Lord, and with his two palms joined together, with a yearning which had, even though it was a supplication, it was a thundering voice. He said, I don't want to be bound. You see, when people really feel the bondage of the things around them, nobody without any exception wants any kind of bondage. Only thing we realize it later, what real bondage is. But as Swamiji says in his very famously said that dependence is misery, independence is happiness or joy. Independence is joy, dependence. So any person, whether it is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Ramakrishna, or anybody, the moment they became, they uh, they gave up the bondage. That's why Swami Vivekananda says renunciation alone makes you fearless. Everything else in the Vairagya Shatakam, it is that Swami Vivekananda quotes, everything in this world is fraught with fear. People fear losing their wealth, people fear losing their health, people fear so many fears, losing their prestige, their ego, and all the things that they think are so valuable. So loss of any one of these things which we hold dear creates a tremendous fear. But the only thing that makes you fearless is renunciation. Now he has just, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken sannyas. So this is a song on sannyas of Gauranga, who though full of bhakti was very strong, because the strength came from the knowledge or the jnana which was mixed with bhakti. So they call his bhakti jnana mishrita bhakti, the bhakti which is full of the knowledge of Brahman or knowledge of Atman. So that uh, gave Chaitanya's message so much strength. Then he says, along with liberation, he has worn a robe of a yogi, that is a gerua cloth, after having his locks of hair shaved. That is one of the things the Indian monastics do. They have to shave off their hair. And there are many reasons for that. Let us not go into that. But then one cries with one's heart, seeing him so surged with bhakti and prema. That is ecstatic love. So bhakti transmutes itself into prema. So this song shows 4 or 5 characteristics of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One is full of emotion which have been transmuted into a divine emotion or prema, ecstatic love. And the second thing which gives authenticity to the emotions is his strength, his firmness in the voice, the thundering voice. They go together. Fearlessness and bhakti, if they go together, then only we have real devotion. So having renounced all, and that strength comes from renunciation. So having renounced all for the benefit of mankind, he has come to distribute prema, the highest love, overwhelmed as he is by the sorrows of mankind. So he knows, unless a person gets attached to the Lord through a intense attachment, far above emotional attachment, which is known as prema, ecstatic love, till then he cannot get rid of his sorrows. Just as we say, the knowledge of Atman or Brahman removes all sorrows. Here also, the prema, the idea of the divine love, can destroy all the sorrows of mankind. Then one is always full of bliss and joy. And the singer who composed this, Premadasa, he says, Premadasa wishes to wander from door to door like a slave at the feet of Sri Chaitanya. So Premadasa says, if I have to be a slave, let me be a slave to my Guru, one who was the king of renouncers, one who renounced everything and whose Guru tested him. All these things are happening in the hut of Keshav Bharati, where his Guru stayed. So he says, why should you be a slave to money, slave to all the worldly things? If at all one has to be a slave, he has to be a slave at the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is an incarnation. That's what Prem Dasa is saying. He's speaking loudly, or he's composed this song just to practice that kind of renunciation. So then Ramlal again sings. After that, Sachi weeps and says, Nimai, how can I live without you? So Sachi is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mother. Normally, when the path of renunciation, whenever a son or somebody who is very dear to the family decides to renounce, the relatives naturally weep, because most of the people who decide to renounce the world, they are opposed not because they feel that this line is wrong, or this idea of sannyasa is not natural, not because of that. They had selfish motives. When they say that we are in the world, we educated you, we expected so much, we have so much of faith and hope in you, we want you to do help us. When, I mean, there are so many selfish motives uh, for denying this ideal of monasticism to the children. So she weeps naturally. She is also a mother. She expects that Nimai is his name, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's childhood name. He said, how can I live without you? It's not that how can you live. If they were really concerned about the child or the young man who's embracing sannyasa, then they'll say, will you be able to live this life? But here he says, how can I live without you? That means I am dependent on you. As Swamiji says, dependence is misery. Only a person who is independent can be free from misery. So here he says, how can I live without you? Thakur says, please sing that song. Now Thakur just changes. He wants another song to be sung because he was full of the spirit of renunciation. He said, why should you bother? Let her say that, oh, how can I live without you? This is a very common thing you will find. So Thakur says, now sing this song. That is, Ami, Mukti Chaina, give me bhakti. I don't want liberation. So a follower of the Parabhakti, one who has attained Parabhakti, he says Mukti is far inferior, because they have already had Mukti in their palm of their hands. So I am not hesitant to get liberation. I mean, the Lord says, I give liberation, it is very easy. But pure bhakti, it is so rare, I don't give it. So, this is one song which Ramlal has been asked to sing by Sri Ramakrishna. Then another line he says, can everybody have the vision of Radha? Can one have the love she had? Only a person who could love Sri Krishna the way Radha loved, pure unselfish love. Radha was quite old when Sri Krishna was just a mere boy, 13 or 14 years old. So she was so concerned about the welfare of Sri Krishna that when he went away, left and went to Dwaraka, she was, anybody who came from that place, she would ask, how is he? She never bothered what happened to her, like Sachi's mother, like Nimai's mother. Said, what will happen to me? Oh, Radha was so full of love. Can one have the love she had? Because her only concern was, is my Lord, whom I love deeply, is he okay? What I lose, even if the Lord has gone away, Sri Krishna left her, never to come back. She was not bothered. As long as he is happy, he is fine. So, Sri Ramakrishna says, such a kind of love is extremely rare. No adoration, no sadhana, just pure and deep love. How can one attain the treasure? So that kind of intense yearning, which Sri Ramakrishna also obviously had, that gave them direct realization. They did not have to pass through the ordinary, because that yearning or that intense desire to attain to this bhakti, it clears all the doubts, it solves all the problems. There are a lot of steps are covered there, and you don't have to go step by step as you do in yoga. That intense bhakti was the only force which Sri Ramakrishna had, and with that he realized the highest by the grace of his Ishta. So now he is giving a beautiful example. He says, Unique are the raindrops that fall on the new moon of the month during the Libra zodiac sign in Swati Nakshatra. So this is a very famous example. There's a particular conjunction of stars. When it happens, the zodiacs and all, will not go into astrology. But Swati Nakshatra, when it is ascending, there is a star which is known as Swati. So when it ascends, they say, the astronomers or the astrologers, or you may say even the people who predict the weather, they say when the Swati starts ascending, the star in that Libra zodiac, the whole group of stars, when the Swati star rises, then only you will find so much of rain. There is a likelihood of heavy rain. For some reason, if these things do not happen, I mean, the Swati Nakshatra, when then the rains do not come. I mean, in other seasons, that is what they believed. Then Thakur again says to Ramlal, please sing that song. There is another Bengali song, Vaishnava Kirtan. Gaur and Nitai, you two brothers. Thakur adds lines to the song along with Ramlal. So, there is a song where Gaur and his companion Nitai, they were two brothers full of compassion. They have come. So, they are welcoming, the Vaishnavas are welcoming. And then he says, I went to Kashi, but Vishweshwara told me that I had come to Sachi Devi's house in Nadia. Oh Lord, I have recognized you. So the singer is saying, I went to visit Kashi Vishweshwara, but you had already incarnated. Sachi Devi is the mother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So already in Nadia, a town known as Nadia, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Gaurang Mahaprabhu has already incarnated. So this author or this poet is saying, I went to Kashi, and Vishweshwara means the Lord himself, Shiva himself has been born. So I had been to several places, but nowhere have I seen a compassionate one like you. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very compassionate. That's why he wanted somehow to give the Mahamantra to everybody, irrespective of his caste, creed, and even religion. Many of the Muslim devotees, there were quite a few Muslim devotees who used to come and they were inspired by the ecstatic love of Gaur means Gauranga and Nitai. So, I have been to several places, but I have not seen a more compassionate one than you were Kanai and Balai in Braja. You came as Krishna and Balarama in Braja. Now hiding these forms, I mean, when Sri Krishna incarnated, you both were like Krishna and Balram, that is Gaur and Nitai. Now you have come in this form of Gaur and Nitai in Nadia. So that is one song written by one of the great poets. In Braja, you played hide and seek. In Nadia, your sport is to roll in the dust, uttering Hari, 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 intoxicated with love. So in Braja, I mean, when you came as Krishna, the young Krishna, the gopis used to just try to, they were so fond of you that they would run to meet their Krishna. Without that, they would not be satisfied, discarding all kinds of social etiquette. This lot of gopis, there were a lot of gopis who used to rush, neglecting their household duties. They used to run after Sri Krishna. So he says, you played that sport when you were there, and now you have come as Gauranga Mahaprabhu, but this time you are not full of action. Your only action is just repeating the name of Hari. So repeating the name of Hari, repeating the Mahamantra as many times as possible is your current, the role. So Gauranga, the compassionate one, the whole of your body is covered. Only your two slanting eyes have been spared. So the poet goes on like that, O Savior of the fallen, hearing your redeeming name, I feel so assured in my mind. So by repeating or thinking about Gauranga, people, this author says, they felt so much of joy, so much assured in the mind that uh, that their liberation or mukti is guaranteed or bhakti is guaranteed. Jagai and Maidar were two people who even threw stones. They were very aggressive towards Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, even Jagai and Madai who criticized you, they have been liberated. O Lord, the Redeemer of the Holy, I need your assurance. So the poet is saying, if you can liberate those scoundrels who Jagai and Madai who were sent to actually disturb him, disturb his kirtan by jealous people, even they got liberation by coming in touch with you. So please give me the assurance that you will do the same to me. I may not be a good person, but if you can liberate Jagai and Madai, why not me? That is the idea. So I need your assurance. Jagai and Madai have been liberated. O Lord, the Redeemer of the Holy, I need your assurance. Then the last verse says, you even raise the Chandala up in your arms and utter Haribol to him. Haribol means say Hari. Hari is one of the names of Vishnu or Krishna. So with so much compassion, you raise the Chandala. These are Chandalas. Chandalas means evil, wicked-minded people. So Jagai and Madai, when they came and they came through stones at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they behaved in a very rough way, but still Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so full of love. So he took these Chandalas in his arms, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and said, please repeat the name. Please repeat the name. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari is the name which they use very often, the Vaishnavas. To him with so much compassion that you, the Lord of indigent, means those people who are helpless, you are the ones, it is you who come in that form and save them. So much compassion you have that you don't consider the merit or demerit of the people who come to you. You just give them shelter. That's the idea. Now there is another topic which I'll just touch upon, and then we will take up some questions and we'll continue in our next Sunday class. So the subheading now is, after the songs have been sung, Sri Ramakrishna's devotees practice sadhana in solitude. Now this is a very important, right on the first day itself, Sri Ramakrishna told M or Master Mashe that now and then please go into solitude. You have worked a lot. You just for some time, at least take some time out from your, you are doing so many things, why don't you do this? So, Sri Ramakrishna is trying to impress upon him that now and then you come. Once you get solitude, then nobody will disturb you. At home, there may be so many issues that you may not be able to meditate. So, Mani is on the upper story of the room of the Nahabat. I think he could not get that. Maybe he didn't take that room, Panchavati. He was still staying on the upper story, M. It was quite late at night. Today is the full moon day of Agrayana. So there was naturally a lot of moonlight, and the sky, the Ganges, the Kali temple, the spires of the shrine, the garden paths and Panchavati seemed to be swimming in moonlight. There was so much of moonlight that you could see as if the whole area around in Dakshineshwar was swimming in the shining moonlight. So Mani all alone is meditating on Sri Ramakrishna, is meditating on his Guru. At about 3 p.m. he rises. He goes towards the Panchavati to the north. Sri Ramakrishna has talked to him about Panchavati. Mani doesn't like to stay in the Nahabat anymore. So though he temporarily stayed, but he said, there is some reason why Sri Ramakrishna is asking me to shift to Panchavati. He has made up his mind to live in the Panchavati room. You see how much obedience he had towards his spiritual preceptor or guru. because he knew that though I like something, but if my guru feels that that is better, my teacher feels, so he is deliberately taking a decision on my behalf, I should obey that. But, and he is ready to leave the room for some special reason or for enjoying nature, he wanted to take that room. But when Sri Ramakrishna said there are higher things than enjoying nature, we remember Swami Ramakrishna Anandji, because many of the Guru Bhais told him, oh, you should go and see the Himalayas, they're so wonderful, it's a magnificent sight, everybody becomes dumb when they see that glory. And Swami Ramakrishna Ji very calmly and coolly said, what shall I do there? Shall I waste my time by seeing one rock placed on another? It is the same everywhere. What is so special? I mean, he was so introvert, so much absorbed in the puja and the uh, connection he had with Sri Ramakrishna. He felt everything else is insipid. So money is there, and he is meditating on this aspect of Sri Ramakrishna. He's at about 3 a.m. early morning. He rises. He goes towards the Panchavati to the north. Sri Ramakrishna has talked to him about the Panchavati. Mani doesn't like to stay in the Nabat anymore. He has made up his mind to stay there. Stillness reigns everywhere. There was a flood tide of the river at 11 p.m. He had heard repeated sound of the tide. In near Dakshineshwar, the rapid change and on the levels of the sea water, they cause big tides. So he proceeds towards the Panchavati. He hears a sound from far off, as if somebody is wailing from the Panchavati grove in pain. Where are you, brother Madhusudana? Now, this story, every one of you know, that young child who was told by his widowed mother that whenever you feel afraid, you just call Madhusudana and your elder brother will come. Now, this boy was so innocent. He called, and then when he was really afraid, this Madhusudana or Krishna came as a companion and as his mother had told. So the child, because of his pure belief, he had the support. And then suddenly the teacher and the mother herself, they said, what do you mean that? He said, you told me to call upon Madhusudana. So that is the reference which is given here, that Master Mashe Mani suddenly hears that sound because he has heard that story, and he feels as if even I have the vision of Madhusudana. And this boy who, Jatila, that was his name, Jatila is saying, where are you, Madhusudana? And because of his cries, the Lord appears. So it is full moon, the rays of the moon stream down through the branches of the banana tree. And he proceeds further and sees from a distance that one of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees is seated in the middle of Panchavati. It is he who has been calling aloud from that solitary spot, where are you, brother Madhusudana? M watches him silently. Now, this devotee, the name is not given, but he was the one who was creating this noise, crying out, where are you? He was in a wonderful state of yearning for the Lord Krishna. So M just keeps quiet and doesn't go nearby. First, he thought it is a divine voice he was listening, but there was an actual person there. So, from that solitary place, he was just trying to recollect and call upon Sri Krishna or Madhusudana. That is why Sri Ramakrishna has told M to come and spend some time and go to the Panchavati and meditate. You will get all this wonderful experience. So I'll conclude now. Let me see if there is one or two questions. I'll just try to answer, otherwise we'll close. Respect with love and love with respect, are they independent to each other? Definitely, there cannot be love without respect. If one does not have respect, it is not love. It is just a kind of animal attachment. Because Sri Ramakrishna loved his consort, spiritual consort, but that was not ordinary human love. He considered her as, he treated her with so much respect, though she was so young in age. She was not only in age, but in those days where people hardly respected the women folk. He gave so much respect. So love cannot be there. True love has to be respectful. Only if you respect a person, your love becomes true and real, because you don't expect. If the moment you expect something from one whom you love, then your love uh, is of a very, very low quality. So in Bhakti Yoga, Swami Vivekananda says, love only thinks of giving, not to accept. It just goes on giving, just as the gopis and the Radha just wanted to give something, feed Krishna, think of Krishna, do everything. What they got from Krishna is was not relevant for them. They were so much immersed that itself, thinking about Krishna itself was a joy for them. So I'll take leave now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.